The alarm rang through the orbital defense station like a scream. Captain Daniel Brooks dropped his coffee cup and ran toward the command center. He had served in space for 32 years, and he had never heard that particular alarm before. It was the sound reserved for impossible events. "What do we have?" he demanded as he burst through the doors. Lieutenant Chris Hartley stood frozen at his console, his young face pale with shock. "Sir, you need to see this yourself." Daniel pushed past him and looked at the screen. His heart stopped. There, drifting at the edge of the Sol system, was a ship that should not exist. The identification codes were old, nearly half a century old, but unmistakable. "The Starward Horizon," Daniel whispered. "That's not possible." The Starward Horizon had vanished 47 years ago. It had been humanity's boldest mission, a voyage into the forbidden zones of space where the Valorian Empire had banned all travel. The ship carried 53 crew members, scientists and explorers who wanted to discover what the Empire was hiding. They never came back. Most people assumed they were dead. The Empire never confirmed anything. And now, the ghost had returned. "Get me a full scan," Daniel ordered. "Life signs, power readings, everything." Hartley's fingers flew across the console. "Minimal power output, sir. The ship is running on emergency reserves only. And the energy signature is strange. It doesn't match anything in our database." Daniel stared at the image of the drifting vessel. The Starward Horizon looked wrong somehow. The hull seemed different, covered in patterns that caught the light in unusual ways. Something had happened to that ship out there in the darkness. "Sir," another officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission from the Valorian embassy. They're demanding we hand over the ship immediately." Of course they were. The Empire had spent 47 years pretending the Starward Horizon never existed. Now that it had returned, they wanted to bury it again. "Tell them we need time to assess the situation," Daniel said. "Standard safety protocols. They won't like that, sir." "I don't care what they like. That's a human ship with potentially human survivors. We're not handing it over until we know what's on board." Daniel made a decision that would change everything. He authorized a covert boarding party before the Empire's envoys could arrive. If there were secrets on that ship, humanity deserved to know them first. 3 hours later, a small shuttle approached the Starward Horizon. Lieutenant Hartley led the boarding team, eager to prove himself despite his nerves. Beside him sat Dr. Megan Cole, a xenarchaeologist who had spent her entire career studying the forbidden zones from afar. Megan had a personal stake in this mission. Her father had been the chief science officer aboard the Starward Horizon. She was only 4 years old when he left and never returned. She had grown up with questions that had no answers, with a grief that never fully healed. Now, perhaps she would finally learn the truth. "Docking complete," Hartley announced. "Everyone, helmets on. We don't know what atmosphere we're dealing with." The airlock hissed open, and they stepped into darkness. Emergency lights flickered along the corridor, casting weak red shadows. The air smelled stale but breathable according to their sensors. Megan gasped as her flashlight revealed the walls. They were covered in symbols, intricate patterns that seemed almost alive. The metal itself had changed, fused with something organic that pulsed with faint bioluminescence. What happened here? Hartley muttered. They moved deeper into the ship. Every room they passed showed signs of transformation. Computer consoles had grown crystal formations. The floor had developed a soft, almost spongy texture in places. This was not the ship that had left Earth 47 years ago. This was something else entirely. In the cargo bay, they found her. A single cryopod sat in the center of the room, untouched by the strange changes that had consumed the rest of the ship. It hummed with power, its display showing stable life signs. Someone was alive inside. Should we open it? Hartley asked, his hand hovering over the release mechanism. Megan studied the readouts. The occupant is healthy. Vital signs are strong. She took a deep breath. Open it. Hartley pressed the button. The pod hissed, releasing a cloud of cold vapor. The lid slowly rose, revealing the woman inside. She was young, perhaps 30 years old, though that seemed impossible given the timeline. Her dark hair was cut short, and her skin was pale from decades of frozen sleep. As her eyes fluttered open, Megan noticed something strange about them. They seemed to hold depths that normal eyes did not possess, a faint glow that might have been a trick of the light. "Easy," Megan said softly. "You're safe. You're home." The woman sat up slowly, looking around at the transformed cargo bay as if seeing it for the first time. Then her gaze settled on the boarding team, and she spoke in a voice rough from disuse. "My name is Elena Vance. I was the pilot of this ship." Hartley exchanged glances with his team. "Ma'am, the Starboard Horizon has been missing for 47 years. How are you still alive? What happened to the rest of the crew?" Elena climbed out of the pod, her movements surprisingly steady for someone who had just woken from cryosleep. She looked at each of them in turn, her strange eyes carrying a weight of knowledge that made Megan uncomfortable. "I have so much to tell you," Elena said, "but there isn't much time." "They're coming." "Who's coming?" Hartley demanded. "The Valorians?" Elena shook her head. "Not just the Valorians, everyone. What we discovered beyond the Forbidden Zone changes everything. It destroys everything the Empire has built. They will kill to keep it secret." Megan stepped forward. "Please, tell us. What did you find out there?" Elena looked at her for a long moment, and something shifted in her expression. Recognition, perhaps, or memory of something painful. "Your father was a brave man," Elena said quietly. "He died protecting what we found. He died believing that one day someone would bring the truth home." Megan felt tears spring to her eyes, but she pushed them back. Now was not the time for grief. Elena turned to face the entire group, her voice growing stronger. "Everything the Valorian Empire told you is a lie. They are not your protectors. They are your jailers. And I carried the proof in my mind, placed there by beings older than the stars themselves." She walked toward the exit, toward the shuttle that would take her home to Earth. "Take me to your leaders," she said, "before the Empire arrives. Because once they learn what I know, they will burn your world to ash rather than let the truth escape." The team followed her in stunned silence. None of them fully understood what was happening, but all of them sensed that the universe had just shifted beneath their feet. The ghost ship had returned, and it carried secrets that would shatter empires. The real story was just beginning. The medical facility on Earth was the most secure building on the planet. Armed guards stood at every entrance. Scanners checked every person who entered. Deep underground, in a room with no windows, Elena Vance sat on a bed while doctors ran test after test on her body. Dr. Megan Cole watched through a glass panel as the medical team worked. 3 days had passed since they brought Elena back from the Starboard Horizon, and each day brought more impossible results. Her cells regenerate 5 times faster than normal, the lead doctor reported. Wounds that should take weeks to heal close in hours. And her brain activity is unlike anything we've ever recorded. She's using parts of the brain that humans don't normally access. Is she still human? Megan asked. The doctor hesitated. Genetically, yes. But something has enhanced her, changed her on a fundamental level. Whatever happened on that ship, it made her into something more. Inside the room, Elena sat perfectly still, her strange eyes focused on something no one else could see. She had been patient with the tests, allowing the doctors to poke and scan and question. But Megan could tell she was waiting for something, or waiting to tell them something. Admiral Paul Simmons arrived that afternoon. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes, the kind of man who carried the weight of difficult decisions on his shoulders. As Earth's military commander, he had the authority to decide what happened next. "The Valorians are demanding her surrender," Simmons said, standing beside Megan at the observation window. "Ambassador Zethron has called 7 times today. Each call has been more threatening than the last. What are you going to do?" Megan asked. Simmons watched Elena through the glass. "That depends on what she has to tell us. If this is just one survivor with a wild story, we might have to give her up to keep the peace. But if what she says is true, if the Empire really is hiding something big, then we have a choice to make." They entered the room together. Elena looked up as they approached, and a small smile crossed her face. "Admiral Simmons," she said, "I remember reading about your father. He commanded the first human deep space mission. He always believed there was more to the universe than the Valorians wanted us to know." Simmons raised an eyebrow. "How do you know about my father?" "I know many things now. Things that were given to me by those who came before." Elena stood and walked to the center of the room. "I will tell you everything, but I need you to understand that once you know the truth, you cannot unknow it. Your lives will change. Humanity's path will change." "Tell us," Megan said. "We need to understand." Elena nodded and began to speak. "When the starward horizon crossed into the Forbidden Zone, we expected to find ruins, remnants of dead civilizations. Instead, we found a gateway. It was ancient, older than any structure we had ever encountered, and it still worked. We passed through it and emerged in a region of space the Valorians had hidden from the rest of the galaxy." She paused, collecting her thoughts. "Beyond the gateway, we found the architects. They were the ones who seeded life across the galaxy, who guided young species toward intelligence and growth. The Valorians called them gods once, worshipped them as creators of all things. But the architects were not gods. They were simply an older species, wiser and more powerful, who believed in nurturing those who came after." "What happened to them?" Simmons asked. "If they were so powerful, why have we never heard of them?" Elena's expression darkened. "The Valorians happened. 3,000 years ago, the Valorians were students of the architects, learning their technology and their secrets. But they grew jealous. They wanted the power for themselves. So they turned the architects' own technology against them." The room fell silent. Megan felt a chill run down her spine. "The Valorians couldn't destroy the architects," Elena continued. "They were too advanced for that. So instead, they imprisoned them. They built a massive containment sphere around the architect homeworld, keeping billions of them in suspended animation, unconscious but alive. And then they erased the truth from galactic history. The Valorian Empire," Simmons said slowly, "is built on stolen technology and buried crimes." "Exactly. Everything they have, their ships, their weapons, their medical advances, all of it came from the architects. The Empire is a lie built on top of a prison." Megan stepped forward. "You said the architects gave you something. What exactly do you carry?" Elena touched her temple. "Their entire history is stored in my mind. Every discovery, every achievement, every truth they wanted the galaxy to know. They chose me because humans have a unique gift. We adapt. Our minds are flexible enough to hold their knowledge without breaking. Why humans?" Simmons asked. "What makes us special?" Elena smiled, and there was something ancient in her expression. "The architects seeded life across 1,000 worlds, hoping to find species who could one day replace them, carry on their work of nurturing the young. Most species became comfortable and stopped growing. Some became conquerors like the Valorians. But humans kept pushing, kept questioning, kept adapting. You never stopped reaching for more." She looked directly at Admiral Simmons. The Valorians fear you. That's why they confine humanity to a small corner of space. That's why they make you ask permission for every new technology, every expansion. They know what you could become if they set you free. A knock at the door interrupted them. An aide entered with a pale face. Admiral, Ambassador Zethron is here. He's demanding to speak with you immediately. And sir, there's something else. Our satellites have detected Valorian warships gathering at the edge of our system. At least 30 of them. Simmons closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they held a cold determination. Tell the ambassador I'll meet him in 1 hour. And get me Senator Grace Patterson. We need to talk about what happens next. After the aide left, Megan turned to Elena. My father. You said he died protecting the archive. Can you tell me how? Elena's face softened with genuine sorrow. The containment systems were failing when we arrived. The architects were slowly dying. Your father figured out how to stabilize them, how to keep them alive long enough for someone to return with help. But the repairs required someone to work inside the containment field. The radiation was lethal. Tears ran down Megan's cheeks. He sacrificed himself. He did. He said he had a daughter waiting at home, and he wanted her to live in a universe where truth mattered more than comfortable lies. He was the bravest person I ever met. Megan wiped her eyes. Her whole life, she had wondered if her father had abandoned her, if the mission had simply been more important than his family. Now she knew. He had died a hero, trying to free an entire species from unjust imprisonment. What do we do now? She asked Elena. Before Elena could answer, she suddenly collapsed to her knees, her body shaking. Strange words poured from her mouth in a language that had no human origin. Megan rushed to her side as Elena's eyes glowed with an inner light. Then, as quickly as it began, it stopped. Elena looked up, her breathing heavy. They're waking up, she whispered. The architects are starting to sense that help might be coming. And they've given me one more gift, one more piece of knowledge. She gripped Megan's hand with surprising strength. I know how to free them. I know how to break the containment and release them back into the galaxy. But if we do this, the Valorians will fight to stop us. They will bring war on a scale humanity has never seen. Megan looked at Admiral Simmons, who stood rigid by the door. Is freedom worth dying for? Elena asked. Is truth worth the destruction of everything you've built? The question hung in the air, heavy and terrible. Outside, Valorian warships circled like vultures. Inside, the future of the galaxy waited for an answer. Simmons straightened his uniform. I need to meet with the ambassador. Whatever we decide together as a species. He left the room, and Megan stayed with Elena, two women bound by loss and hope, waiting to see what path humanity would choose. The meeting took place in a hidden station deep within the asteroid belt, far from Valorian sensors and prying eyes. Senator Grace Patterson had arranged everything in secret, gathering the most important leaders of humanity in one room to decide the fate of their species. Admiral Simmons stood at the head of the table. Senator Patterson sat beside him, her silver hair pulled back, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Commander Kyle Brennan, a former military officer who now led a small resistance movement against Valorian restrictions, leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. Dr. Megan Cole sat near Elena Vance, who had remained quiet since they arrived. We have 48 hours, Simmons began. That's the deadline Ambassador Zethron gave us. Surrender Elena and the ship, or face what he called necessary measures. Our intelligence suggests those measures include a full-scale attack on Earth. They wouldn't dare, Patterson said. The other species in the galaxy would never accept such open aggression. The other species believe whatever the Empire tells them, Bran replied bitterly. They've been trained for 3,000 years to trust the Valorians. A few dead humans won't change their minds, which is why we need to change their minds ourselves, Simmons said. He turned to Elena. You said you carry proof of the Empire's crimes. Show us everything. Elena nodded slowly. There is a way. The architects gave me the ability to share memories directly. If you are willing, I can show you what I experienced beyond the gateway. Not just words, but images, feelings, the full truth. The leaders exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, Patterson spoke. Do it. We need to understand what we're fighting for. Elena closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. One by one, the people in the room felt a strange pressure, and then the world dissolved around them. They stood in space, surrounded by stars they did not recognize. Before them floated a structure so massive it defied comprehension. A sphere encasing an entire star, covered in patterns of light and shadow that moved like living things. The Dyson sphere of the architects got the memory shifted. They were inside the sphere now, walking through corridors that seemed to breathe. The walls displayed images of worlds being born, of simple creatures evolving into intelligent beings, of civilizations rising under the guidance of gentle hands. The architects didn't conquer, Elena's voice echoed around them. They nurtured. They watched over the galaxy for millions of years, helping younger species find their way. Another shift. They saw the Valorians as they once were, small and primitive, receiving the gift of knowledge from beings of light. They watched as the Valorians grew powerful, as gratitude turned to envy, as students became traitors. The attack was horrible to witness. Valorian ships, built with stolen technology, surrounded the architect homeworld. Weapons designed by the architects themselves were turned against their creators. Billions of ancient beings fell into forced sleep, their consciousness dimming but never dying. They were afraid to kill them completely, Elena explained. The containment uses architect life energy to power itself. If they die, the systems fail. So the Valorians kept them alive but sleeping, prisoners in their own home. The memory jumped forward. The stalwart horizon arriving at the sphere. The crew's shock and wonder as they realized what they had found. Weeks of exploration, of learning, of understanding the magnitude of the Empire's crime. They saw Megan's father working on the containment systems, his face illuminated by alien technology. They heard his last words, spoken to Elena as the radiation claimed him. Tell my daughter I love her. Tell her I did this so she could live free. Megan sobbed, but she did not look away. She needed to see this. She needed to know. The memory showed the remaining crew growing old within the sphere, choosing to stay and learn rather than return with incomplete information. They saw Elena, the youngest among them, being chosen to carry the archive back to human space. The architects themselves reached into her mind and planted their history, their knowledge, their hope. You are the bridge. A voice like music spoke to her. You will carry us to those who can set us free. The memory ended. The leaders found themselves back in the meeting room, breathing hard, tears on their faces. The truth was no longer abstract. They had lived it. My God, Patterson whispered. 3,000 years. 3,000 years of lies. Now you understand, Elena said quietly. The Valorians aren't protectors. They're prison guards. And every species in the galaxy has been deceived. Brannon pushed off from the wall, his expression fierce. Then we fight. We broadcast this to every world, every station, every ship with a receiver. We show them what you showed us. It's not that simple, Simmons said heavily. The Valorians control the galactic communication networks. Any transmission we send will be blocked or dismissed as human propaganda. There is one place they don't control, Elena said. All eyes turned to her. Nexus Prime, the neutral trading station at the center of galactic commerce. It has independent broadcast systems designed to be free from Empire interference. If we can reach Nexus Prime and upload the archive there, the truth will spread to every corner of the galaxy before the Valorians can stop it. Nexus Prime is deep in neutral territory, Simmons said. We'd have to cross half the galaxy to get there, through space the Empire controls. It's a suicide mission. Maybe, Elena agreed. But it's also our only chance. If we don't try, the Empire will silence us forever. They'll destroy Earth, rewrite history, and the architects will remain prisoners until they finally die. Silence fell over the room. Each person wrestled with the weight of the decision. Megan was the first to speak. My father gave his life for this. He believed humanity deserved the truth. He believed we could handle it. She looked at each leader in turn. Are we going to prove him wrong? Patterson straightened in her chair. I've spent 20 years in politics, pretending to accept limits that I knew were unjust. I'm tired of pretending. I vote we fight. Brennan nodded sharply. My resistance has been waiting for a cause worth dying for. This is it. Simmons remained silent for a long moment. He was thinking of the millions of humans who would die if this went wrong. He was thinking of cities burning, of children crying, of a species pushed to extinction. But he was also thinking of what it meant to live on your knees, begging permission to exist. We fight, he said finally. But we fight smart. We need a plan that gives us the best chance of success. For the next 2 hours, they planned. Captain Nor Reyes, humanity's best pilot, would command the stealth ship Silent Dawn on the mission to Nexus Prime. Dr. Marcus Webb, a brilliant engineer, believed he could adapt architect technology to improve the ship's capabilities. Elena would carry the archive in her mind, ready to upload at the destination. Megan volunteered to join the mission. Her expertise in xenorchaeology might prove useful, and she had personal reasons that went beyond science. She wanted to finish what her father started. Lieutenant Hartley also requested to be included. He had been the first to board the starward horizon, and he felt connected to the mission in ways he couldn't fully explain. The Valorian fleet will attack Earth as soon as they realize we're not surrendering, Simmons said. We'll hold them as long as we can. Buy you time to reach Nexus Prime. You'll be massively outgunned, Brennan warned. I know. Simmons allowed himself a grim smile. But humans have a history of surviving things we shouldn't. Maybe we'll surprise them. As the meeting ended, Elena pulled Megan aside. Your father spoke of you often, she said. He kept a journal during our time in the sphere. I found it before we left. I saved it for you. She handed Megan a small data chip. Megan held it like it was made of glass, tears threatening to fall again. He loved you more than anything, Elena said. And he believed you would be part of the answer. He was right. Megan pocketed the chip and straightened her shoulders. Let's go save the galaxy. Outside, the stars waited, cold and distant. Somewhere among them, the architects dreamed of freedom. And humanity, for the first time in its history, prepared to challenge an empire. The Silent Dawn was the fastest stealth ship humanity had ever built, and Dr. Marcus Webb had spent the last 24 hours making it even better. Using the architect technology that Elena provided, he had upgraded the engines, the shields, and most importantly, the cloaking systems. The Valorians won't even know we're there, Webb said proudly, wiping grease from his hands. Their sensors will slide right off us like water off glass. Captain Nora Reyes walked through the ship, checking every system personally. She was a small woman with dark skin and sharp eyes, known throughout the fleet for her incredible reflexes and her willingness to attempt impossible maneuvers. When Admiral Simmons asked her to lead this mission, she accepted without hesitation. We launch in 1 hour, she announced to the assembled crew. Everyone should know that this is likely a one-way trip. The Valorians will be hunting us, and even if we reach Nexus Prime, getting out again will be almost impossible. Elena stood near the back of the group. Beside her were Megan, Lieutenant Hartley, and Webb. 4 people, plus Reyes and a small flight crew, heading toward the center of the galaxy with the fate of countless species in their hands. "We knew the risks when we volunteered," Hartley said. His voice was steady, though Megan noticed his hands trembling slightly. "Let's get moving." An hour later, the Silent Dawn slipped away from the asteroid base and disappeared into the darkness of space. Behind them, the Valorian fleet was already advancing on human territory. The first shots of the war would be fired within hours. Admiral Simmons stood on the bridge of the defense station, watching the enemy approach. 37 Valorian warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity possessed. Against them, he had 12 patrol ships and a handful of orbital platforms. "All ships form defensive line Delta," he ordered. "We're not trying to win here. We're trying to buy time. Every hour we survive is an hour closer to victory." The battle began. Valorian weapons lit up the darkness like terrible stars. Human ships weaved and dodged, their smaller size and greater maneuverability giving them some advantage. But the enemy was relentless, and one by one, human vessels began to fall. On the Silent Dawn, the crew monitored the battle through long-range sensors. They'd watched their friends and comrades die, and they could do nothing but keep flying forward. "Stay focused," Reyes said quietly. "Their sacrifice means nothing if we fail." The journey to Nexus Prime would take 3 days at maximum speed. 3 days of hiding, of running, of praying the Valorians wouldn't find them. Elena spent most of that time in meditation, communing with the architect consciousness that lived within her mind. "They're aware of what's happening," she told Megan a second day. "They can feel the violence, the death. It causes them pain, even in their sleep." "Will they be able to help us?" Megan asked. "Not yet. The containment is still too strong. But when the truth spreads across the galaxy, when other species begin to question the Empire, it will weaken. Every doubt, every rebellion, every act of defiance chips away at the prison walls." Dr. Webb worked constantly, trying to improve their chances. He created devices that could override station security, transmitters that could amplify their signal, and weapons modifications that might give them an edge in close combat. "I should be terrified," he admitted to Hartley during a brief rest. "But honestly, I've never felt more alive. We're doing something that matters." Hartley nodded. He had spent his career chasing glory, wanting to be remembered as a hero. Now, facing almost certain death, he understood that glory wasn't the point. The point was doing what was right, even when it cost everything. On the 3rd day, they reached Valorian-controlled space. Reyes flew with incredible skill, sliding through patrol routes and hiding in the shadows of asteroids. Twice, enemy ships passed so close that the crew held their breath, certain they would be discovered. Twice, the architect-enhanced cloaking held. Then, just as Nexus Prime came into visual range, everything went wrong. "Multiple signatures dropping out of hyperspace," Reyes announced, her voice tight with tension. "It's a full battle group. 12 ships, including a command carrier. High Commander Velaris himself had come to stop them. Somehow, the Empire had predicted their destination. A trap had been laid, and they had flown straight into it. The comm system crackled with an incoming transmission. "Human vessel, this is High Commander Velaris of the Valorian Imperial Fleet. You are surrounded. Surrender the woman called Elena Vance, and we will allow the rest of you to return home safely." Reyes looked at Elena, who shook her head firmly. "We cannot surrender," Elena said. "If they take me, the truth dies forever." Reyes opened a channel. "High Commander, This is Captain Nora Reyes of the Silent Dawn. We respectfully decline your offer." A moment of silence, then Velarus responded, his voice cold with anger. "Then you will all die. Such is the fate of those who challenge the Empire." The Valorian ships began to move, forming a net around them. Nexus Prime was so close, just a few million kilometers away, but it might as well have been on the other side of the galaxy. "We can't fight 12 ships," Webb said desperately. "We need another option." Hartley stepped forward. "What if we don't need to fight them all? What if we just need to get past them?" He pointed at the tactical display. "Nexus Prime is a civilian station. The Valorians can't attack it directly without causing a galactic incident. If we can get inside the station's protective zone, they'll have to hold fire. The gap in their formation is too small," Reyes said. "We'd never make it through. Unless someone created a distraction," Hartley said quietly. Everyone understood what he meant. The shuttle bay contained a small auxiliary craft, barely more than an escape pod with engines. It could draw fire, creating enough confusion for the Silent Dawn to slip through. "I'll do it," Hartley said. "The rest of you are more important to the mission. I'm just a tactical officer." "Chris, no," Megan protested. "There has to be another way." Hartley smiled at her, a genuine smile that softened his usually serious face. "Tell me this isn't what heroes do. Tell me this isn't worth dying for." She couldn't. None of them could. Elena gripped his arm. "The architects will remember you. When they wake, they will know what you did. Your name will be spoken among the stars." Hartley laughed softly. "That's more than I ever expected from life." He looked at Reyes. "Give me 2 minutes. Then punch through that gap with everything you've got." He ran for the shuttle bay before anyone could stop him. The small craft launched, immediately drawing attention from the Valorian ships. Hartley flew like a madman, diving and spinning, drawing fire away from the Silent Dawn. Explosions burst around him as he screamed through the enemy formation. "Now!" Reyes shouted. The Silent Dawn's engines roared to full power. Reyes pushed the ship harder than it was designed to go, weaving through the gap that Hartley had created. Behind them, the small shuttle finally took a direct hit, exploding in a flash of light. Lieutenant Chris Hartley was gone, but the Silent Dawn was through. They crossed into Nexus Prime's protected zone just as the Valorian ships moved to pursue. High Commander Velarus ordered his fleet to hold position, unwilling to risk the political consequences of attacking neutral space. For now, they were safe. But the station was surrounded. There would be no escape. "It doesn't matter," Elena said, her voice thick with grief and determination. "We only need to reach the communication hub. Once the truth is out, nothing else matters." The Silent Dawn docked at Nexus Prime, and the remaining crew stepped out into a station filled with aliens who had no idea that their entire understanding of history was about to shatter. The final phase of the mission had begun. Nexus Prime was a massive structure, home to millions of beings from hundreds of different species. Traders, diplomats, refugees, and criminals all shared the same corridors, united by a desire for neutrality in a galaxy dominated by the Valorian Empire. The station's independence was guaranteed by ancient treaties that even the Empire hesitated to break openly. Elena led the team through crowded marketplaces and narrow passages, following a map that existed only in her enhanced mind. Dr. Webb carried his modified transmitter equipment. Megan stayed close to Elena, a hand on her weapon, watching for threats. Captain Reyes had remained with the Silent Dawn, ready to provide support if needed. "The central communication hub is at the heart of the station," Elena explained as they walked. "It's the most heavily guarded location on Nexus Prime, the station. Administrators won't just let us walk in and start broadcasting. Then we'll have to convince them Megan said. They had barely gone a kilometer when they encountered the first obstacle. Valorian soldiers in civilian clothing, trying to blend into the crowd but watching every exit. High Commander Valorous had found a way to place agents inside the station without technically violating the neutrality treaties. Keep moving, Elena whispered. Don't make eye contact. They slipped past one checkpoint, then another. Webb's devices helped, jamming the soldiers' communication equipment and creating false sensor readings. But they all knew it was only a matter of time before they were discovered. The communication hub was a towering structure at the center of the station, rising through multiple levels like a metal tree reaching for the stars. Screens covered its surface, broadcasting news and advertisements to the passing crowds. Somewhere inside was the main transmission array, capable of sending signals to every corner of the galaxy, and waiting at the entrance. Surrounded by 20 Valorian soldiers in full armor, was High Commander Valorous himself. He was tall even by Valorian standards, with the purple-tinted skin and elongated features of his species. His eyes held the cold confidence of someone who had never known defeat. Elena Vance, he said, his voice carrying across the open plaza. You have led me on quite a chase, but it ends here. People in the crowd began to scatter, sensing danger. Station security officers appeared, but kept their distance, unsure how to handle an armed standoff involving the most powerful military commander in the galaxy. Let us pass, Elena said, stepping forward. We have done nothing wrong. Valorous laughed, a harsh sound without warmth. You carry stolen property. You intend to spread lies that would destabilize galactic peace. In the name of the Empire, I am placing you under arrest. The truth is not stolen property, Megan shot back. And your peace is just another word for oppression. Valorous turned his attention to her. Dr. Cole, your father was a troublemaker as well. It seems the tendency runs in families. The mention of her father ignited something fierce in Megan's chest. But she held her ground. Webb leaned close to Elena. I can modify the hub systems remotely if I can get to that access panel. He pointed to a small terminal on the side of the building, away from the main entrance. Buy me 5 minutes. Elena nodded almost invisibly. Then she stepped forward, drawing Valorous's full attention. Do you know why you're really here, Commander? It's not to protect peace. It's because you're afraid. The Empire has always been afraid. Valorous's expression flickered. Afraid of what? A dying species confined to a handful of worthless planets? Afraid of what we could become. Elena's voice rang across the plaza, and people who had been fleeing stopped to listen. 3,000 years ago, your ancestors met the architects, the beings who created life across this galaxy. They were welcomed as students, trusted as friends, and they repaid that trust with betrayal. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Other species were listening, aliens who had never questioned the Empire's version of history. The Valorians imprisoned the architects, Elena continued. Billions of ancient beings, trapped in eternal sleep so that the Empire could steal their technology and build their power. Everything the Empire has, every ship, every weapon, every medicine, was taken from the very creatures they claimed to have surpassed. Lies, Valorous growled. Desperate lies from a desperate species. Then why are you here? Elena asked. If I'm lying, why bring warships to stop me? Why surround this station with your fleet? Why are you so afraid of what I might say? Behind the main group, Webb reached the access panel and began working. Valorous' soldiers noticed the movement, but they hesitated, unsure whether to break formation. Valorous saw the distraction and made his decision. Take them. All of them. The soldiers charged forward. Megan drew her weapon and fired, dropping 2 soldiers before they could reach her. Elena moved with inhuman speed, disabling another 3 with precise strikes to their neural centers. But there were too many of them. Webb's fingers flew across the panel. Almost there. Valeris himself advanced on Elena, drawing a weapon that hummed with deadly energy. You could have lived, he said. You could have surrendered and spent your remaining years in comfort. Instead, you chose death. I chose truth, Elena replied. They fought, human and Valorian, while around them the battle raged. Megan took a hit to her shoulder, but kept firing. More station security joined the fight, some helping the humans, others trying to restore order. Chaos consumed the plaza. Done. Webb shouted. The system is open. Elena now. Elena broke away from Valeris and ran toward the hub. The commander raised his weapon to fire, but Megan threw herself in front of him, tackling him to the ground. The blast went wide. Elena reached the main transmission array and placed her hands on the interface. The architect consciousness within her surged forward, flooding the system with data. Images, sounds, memories, the complete history of the galaxy's greatest crime began broadcasting to every receiver. Every screen, every communication device across known space, on 1,000 worlds. Beings of 100 different species watched in shock as the truth unfolded. They saw the architects as they once were, wise and generous. They saw the Valorian betrayal, the imprisonment, the lies. They saw 3,000 years of false history crumble in an instant. Valeris screamed in rage and threw Megan aside. He aimed at Elena, determination burning in his eyes. Even if I die, Elena said calmly, the truth is already free. You cannot stop what has begun. He pulled the trigger, but the blast never reached her. Dr. Webb, brave, brilliant Webb, threw himself in the path of the shot. He fell to the ground, his body broken, but his eyes still fixed on the screens, showing their message spreading across the galaxy. We did it, he whispered. And then he was gone. Station security finally overwhelmed the Valorian soldiers, forcing them to surrender. Valeris stood alone, surrounded by guards from 12 different species, all looking at him with new eyes. The Protector had become the villain. You will pay for this, he hissed at Elena. The Empire will recover. We always do. No, Elena said softly. You won't, because now the architects are waking up. Even as she spoke, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. The containment field around the architect homeworld was failing. The ancient beings, sensing that the truth was finally free, were stirring from their long sleep. The prison that had held them for 3,000 years was breaking apart. Over the following days, the galactic order shattered. Species that had served the Empire for millennia demanded answers. Member worlds declared independence. The Valorian fleet, spread thin trying to contain 1,000 rebellions, could no longer threaten Earth. Admiral Simmons had held the line. Against impossible odds, he had kept the Valorian invasion at bay, losing many ships but never surrendering. When the news came that the mission had succeeded, he wept openly on the bridge. The war was not over. It would take years, perhaps decades, to fully dismantle the Empire's grip on the galaxy. But the foundation of lies had cracked, and nothing built on it could stand for long. Elena stood before a memorial on Earth, a monument to those who had given everything for the truth. Carved into the stone were the names of the Starbound Horizon crew, including Megan's father. Beside them were newer names: Chris Hartley, Marcus Webb, and the other humans who had fallen in the battle. Megan joined her, arm in a sling but standing tall. My father would have been proud, she said. He dreamed of a universe where humanity could stand as equals among the stars. Elena nodded. She was different now, more human and more than human at the same time. The architects were slowly awakening, and she remained their bridge to the younger species. Your father believed in humanity's potential, Elena said. He was right. When faced with a choice between comfortable slavery and dangerous freedom, your people chose to fight. That's why the architects seeded this galaxy with life, hoping to find species brave enough to carry on their work. She looked up at the stars, now full of possibility instead of limits. The Valorians feared what humanity could become. They should have, because you never stopped reaching for more, even when everything was against you. Megan smiled through her tears. What happens now? Now we help the architects rebuild. We welcome the other species into a new galactic community, one based on truth instead of lies. And we explore, discover, grow, just as humans were always meant to do.